My daughter-in-law mocked my military disability and called me a limping old man behind my back, so I stopped helping their business. Now they lost everything to a scam and want my help. I'm a 58-year-old retired Navy veteran. Served for 26 years before losing my left leg below the knee during my final deployment in 2012. The incident happened during a routine patrol, and I took out my leg and killed 2 of my men. I still wake up some nights thinking about them. The Navy awarded me a Purple Heart, but I would trade it in a heartbeat to have my guys back. My wife Nancy was my rock through recovery and rehabilitation. She never let me feel less of a man because of my prosthetic. We had plans for retirement, traveling, spending time with grandkids. But life had other plans. She got diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer in 2018 and passed away within 6 months. I miss her every day, especially the way she joked in serious situations to make things light. I have 2 sons. My older one, Kirk, 35, lives in Australia with his family. He wanted me to move there after Nancy died, but I couldn't leave the house we built together. My younger son Troy, 32, lives nearby with his wife Bridget, 29. Troy was always the creative one, went to culinary school instead of college. That's where he met Bridget, who was studying business management. After retirement, I needed something to keep my hands and mind busy. So, I started a small woodworking business from my garage. Nancy always said I was good with my hands, so I turned our garage into a workshop. Nothing fancy, just custom furniture, repairs, some restoration work. The local community has been supportive, especially after learning I'm a disabled vet. The work helps me stay active despite my prosthetic, and the extra income is nice. 2 years ago, Troy and Bridget approached me with a business proposal. They wanted to open a restaurant. Troy would be the chef, and Bridget would handle the business side. They had found a perfect location, an old Italian place that was closing down. The owner was selling everything, including equipment, for $300,000. They had saved about $100,000 but were struggling to get a bank loan due to their student debt. I could see how passionate they were about this dream. Troy reminded me of Nancy, same sparkle in his eyes when talking about cooking. After my military pension and Nancy's life insurance, I had decent savings. I decided to invest $175,000 in their restaurant. I told them to consider it an investment, not a loan. I wanted to be part of their success. The restaurant, Fresh Plate, opened 8 months later. Troy's food was amazing. He combined classic techniques with modern flavors. Bridget handled the business well initially. I helped wherever I could, fixing equipment, doing maintenance work, even hosting when they were short-staffed. My prosthetic never slowed me down. Regular customers knew me as chef's dad and would often stop for a chat. Everything changed when Bridget's college friend Darla, 30, showed up 6 months ago. She had moved back after a messy divorce. Bridget immediately offered her a job managing the restaurant's social media and online presence. From day one, Darla treated me disrespectfully. If I was hosting, she'd walk past without acknowledgement. When I'd be fixing something, she'd loudly complain about the noise and mess. I brushed it off initially. The military had taught me not everyone will like you, and that's fine. But Darla's behavior got worse. She'd pass mean comments about modernizing the restaurant's image. She also started scheduling younger hosts when she knew I was supposed to work. I noticed Bridget becoming distant too. Her greetings were getting fewer with less conversation. Last month, I was at the restaurant after closing, replacing some cabinet hinges in the kitchen. Bridget and Darla were in the office with the door slightly open. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but their voices were easily audible. Darla said, "Why do you let that limping old man hang around here? It's bad for business having a cripple greet customers. People come to restaurants for ambience, not to feel like they're in a VA hospital." I froze, cabinet door half open. What hurt more than Darla's words was Bridget's response. She laughed, not an awkward laugh, but a genuine one, and said, "I know, it's embarrassing. But it's Troy's dad and he invested money, so we have to humor him. I've been trying to schedule him less on busy nights. Between his limping and that awful squeaking from his prosthetic, he makes some customers uncomfortable." Darla continued, "Can't you buy him out? Use some of the renovation money?" Bridget sighed and said, "We're working on it. Troy's talking to him about selling his house. Old people should be in retirement communities anyway. We can use that money to expand." I quietly finished the repair and left without a word. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing Bridget's laugh, seeing her conspire to push me out of the business I helped build. Next morning, I texted Troy saying I won't be helping at the restaurant anymore. When he called asking why, I told him exactly what I overheard. Instead of being angry at them, he accused me of eavesdropping and misinterpreting private conversations between girls. He said I was being too sensitive and needed to apologize to Bridget and Darla for making them uncomfortable. When I refused, he said I was acting like a difficult old man and needed to get over myself. I told him I might have lost a leg serving my country, but I haven't lost my self-respect. I reminded him whose money helped start the restaurant. He got angry, saying I was trying to guilt trip him with my war stories. Later that day, Bridget called crying, claiming I was trying to create problems between her and Troy. She denied that she had said anything offensive and painted herself as the victim of my harassment. Troy believes her completely. He says I'm just bitter about getting older and taking it out on Bridget. It's been 3 weeks now. I haven't been to the restaurant. Troy only contacts me to demand I apologize to Bridget. Says I'm being selfish and hurting their business by staying away. I miss our earlier relationship. I miss being part of their success story. But I won't apologize for standing up for myself. My disability isn't something to be mocked or hidden away. I lost my leg serving this country, watched good men die. I won't let anyone, family or not, make me feel ashamed of my sacrifice. Was I wrong to confront them about what I heard? Should I just have kept quiet and gradually stepped away? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments on my original post. Reading your responses helped me realize I wasn't being oversensitive, my feelings were valid. So many developments this week proved you all were right about standing my ground. 3 days ago, I was working in my garage when Jenny, 25, one of Fresh Plate's longtime waitresses, showed up at my house. She had been with the restaurant since opening day. I remember her as a hard-working kid putting herself through nursing school. She quit last week, and what she revealed made me very angry. Turns out, my disability had become a running joke at the restaurant. When I wasn't around, Darla would imitate my walk, exaggerating the limp and making squeaking noises to mock my prosthetic. Bridget wouldn't just laugh, she'd actively participate, telling stories about how I scared away customers. They had a particularly cruel nickname for me, Peg Leg Pete, even though my name isn't even Peter. Jenny said most staff members felt uncomfortable with this behavior, but feared speaking up. One new waiter who defended me got his hours cut. When Jenny finally confronted Bridget about the mockery, Bridget told her that she should learn to take a joke. Next day, Jenny found her shifts reduced from 5 days to 2. But the mocking wasn't even the worst part. Remember all the maintenance work I did at the restaurant? Fixing plumbing, repairing equipment, general upkeep? Jenny revealed that Bridget and Darla would have contractors redo most of my work after I left. They claimed my repairs weren't visually pleasing and would damage the restaurant's image. They even hired a $5,000 designer to redo the host stand I built by hand. This explained the renovation bills Troy mentioned last month when he was complaining about tight finances. They were literally throwing away money just to erase any trace of my contributions. Jenny showed me pictures on her phone. The beautiful oak host stand I spent weeks crafting had been replaced by some modern glass and metal monstrosity. The disrespect went deeper than just the physical changes. Bridget had been systematically erasing my presence from the restaurant's history. The About Us page Darla created for their website painted Troy as a self-made chef who built everything from scratch. There was no mention of my investment or involvement on that page. While Jenny was still at my house, Troy showed up unannounced. He looked stressed. He said that the restaurant was struggling without my help. Regular customers were asking about me, especially the Sunday brunch crowd I used to host. Troy had a proposition. He suggested I should sign over my house to them as security for my initial investment. He said since I abandoned the restaurant during its growth phase, they needed protection for their business interests. Bridget had apparently consulted some lawyer who said they could claim additional compensation for my sudden withdrawal of services. I couldn't help it, I laughed in his face. I wasn't an employee there, and then the sheer audacity of trying to take my house after everything they'd done. I told him my military pension and woodworking income were enough to live comfortably. I didn't need to validate myself to people who mocked my sacrifice. He left angrily, saying I was choosing my pride over family. After Troy left, Jenny shared one final detail that confirmed everything. She had recorded some of Bridget and Darla's mockery on her phone, thinking she might need evidence if the workplace harassment got worse. She played one clip for me, it was from just last week. Bridget was clearly heard saying, "God, I'm so glad we got rid of the old cripple. The place feels so much more upscale now." Jenny offered to send me the recordings, but I declined. I didn't need more evidence of their shamelessness. I wrote Jenny a reference letter for her next job. She's a good kid who stood up for what's right, exactly the kind of nurse we need more of. This past week has been eye-opening. What I overheard that night wasn't an isolated incident, it was just the tip of the iceberg. They'd been disrespecting me for months, happily using my money and labor while mocking my disability behind my back. The renovation bills weren't about improving the restaurant, they were about erasing any trace of the embarrassing cripple who helped build it. Last night I got a text from Troy, saying Bridget was willing to forgive if I apologized for causing drama. I blocked his number. Let them run their precious restaurant without my embarrassing presence. I may have one leg, but I still have my dignity. That's worth more than any business success. I've started focusing more on my woodworking. Got a big order for custom cabinets from a local church. The pastor there is also a veteran, lost his arm in Desert Storm. We swapped stories while discussing the design. It's funny how life works, I lost my family's respect but gained a new friend who understands what sacrifice really means. Update 2. Things have gone completely sideways at Fresh Plate, but not for the reasons Bridget and Troy claimed. The truth that emerged this week made all their previous behavior look almost innocent in comparison. Remember Darla, the friend who enjoyed mocking my disability? Turns out she wasn't just handling social media. Bridget had quietly made her co-manager 2 months ago and given her full access to the restaurant's accounts. According to Jenny, who still keeps in touch with other staff, Darla convinced them to modernize their business model through some innovative investments. It started with cryptocurrency. Darla claimed her ex-husband had made millions through crypto trading. She showed them screenshots of her supposed trading accounts, promising she could triple their money in months. Bridget, without consulting anyone, transferred $150,000 of the restaurant's funds into various crypto accounts Darla recommended. But that wasn't enough. Darla then introduced them to some exclusive overseas property investment scheme. The pitch was perfect, they would buy shares in luxury resorts being built in Dubai. The projected returns were astronomical. Bridget and Troy pooled in another $145,000, including money borrowed from her parents. 3 days ago, everything fell apart. Darla disappeared. No notice, no explanation. Just an envelope left on Bridget's desk containing a letter and fake IDs. The letter confessed everything. She wasn't divorced because she was never married. The trading screenshots were photoshopped. Her entire identity was fake. The crypto accounts were scams, and the Dubai property scheme didn't exist. They lost nearly $300,000, including what remained of my initial investment. Troy showed up at my house yesterday, looking extremely bad. The restaurant is on the verge of collapse. Their suppliers are demanding cash payments because checks started bouncing. They're 3 months behind on rent and the staff hasn't been paid in full for weeks. He broke down in my garage, crying like a child. Bridget was too ashamed to come herself. Through his sobs, Troy admitted everything: how they'd mocked me, how they'd wasted money replacing my work, how they'd planned to push me out completely. He said Bridget was in denial about her role in this disaster, still blaming me for abandoning them. Then came the real reason for his visit. They needed money, a lot of it. The bank wouldn't help them. Bridget's parents lost their savings in the same scam. They were desperate enough to come to the limping old man they'd ridiculed. Troy asked if I could loan them $200,000 to save the business. He promised things would be different this time. I let him finish talking. Then I showed him something, my latest woodworking project, a handcrafted display case. Inside were my military medals, including the Purple Heart. I told him I earned these by putting my life on the line, by watching good men die, by losing my leg for this country. I didn't survive all that to be treated like an embarrassment by my own family. I said I'd rather donate my money to veteran support groups than give another penny to people who mocked my disability. He called me heartless. He added I was sentencing them to bankruptcy out of hate and anger. Maybe he was right about me being heartless, but my heart hardened the day I heard them laugh at my sacrifice. Troy left angrily, but this time his anger felt different, more desperate than righteous. On his way out, he muttered something about Bridget being right, that I was enjoying their downfall. I almost called him back, almost gave in, but then I remembered Bridget's laugh when Darla had mocked my walk, remembered how they tried to take my house, remembered the systematic way they tried to erase me from their success story. Jenny texted me this morning. Most of the staff have quit. The few remaining are updating their resumes. The health department is investigating complaints about food safety violations because Troy can't afford proper refrigerator repairs. The fancy designer furniture they bought to replace my embarrassing work is now being seized by creditors. So, the irony isn't lost on me. The people who thought I was bad for their image now have no image left to protect. The restaurant that was too good for a disabled veteran is now failing because they trusted a scammer over family. I should feel justified, maybe even happy. But, I just feel tired. Tired of the drama, tired of being right about their character, tired of watching my son learn hard lessons. But I won't step in to save them. Some lessons need to be learned the hard way. Update 3. Fresh Plate served its last meal last week. The closure wasn't sudden, it was like watching a slow-motion car crash. First, their power got cut off due to unpaid bills. Then the staff walked out after another missed payroll. Finally, the health department shut them down after finding violations they couldn't afford to fix. Troy and Bridget moved in with her parents, taking only what they could fit in their car. The rest was seized by creditors. Bridget's parents had to refinance their house to cover the debts they guaranteed. They're all trying to avoid bankruptcy, but from what I hear, it's inevitable. My prediction about Bridget's true colors proved right. The moment things got tough, she blamed everyone but herself. First, it was Darla's fault for scamming them. Then it was the staff's fault for abandoning them. Eventually, she circled back to blaming me, claiming my negativity had cursed their business. Troy finally saw through her nonsense, but it was too late to save anything. He sent me a long email last week, apologizing for everything, for not believing me about Bridget's behavior, for letting them mock my disability, for trying to take my house. He said he'd been blind and stupid and admitted that Bridget had been talking about pushing me out long before Darla showed up. They'd planned to use the profits to buy out my investment, then suggest I retire to a community for disabled veterans. The email ended with him asking if we could try to rebuild our relationship. He was looking for work as a line cook and was separating from Bridget. I wanted to respond by forgiving him. But I remembered how he stood by while they mocked my sacrifice, how he tried to guilt me into giving them more money. I marked the email as read and went back to work. I've expanded my woodworking business by taking over the lease of a small warehouse and hiring 2 part-time helpers. Jenny now works for me full-time, handling orders and accounts while finishing nursing school. It turns out the limping old man can run a successful business without mocking others or falling for scams. I got a call from Bridget's mother yesterday. She started with small talk, then launched into a guilt trip about family sticking together. She said Troy was depressed and Bridget had learned her lesson. She wants me to be the bigger person and help them restart. I listened politely, then told her I'd rather be alone than be with people who mock disabilities. I blocked her number before she could respond. The local veterans group meets at my workshop now. We're starting a program teaching woodworking skills to disabled vets. Last week, a young Marine who lost both legs in Afghanistan joined us. Watching him learn to use the lathe machine from his wheelchair reminded me why I can't let people shame me for my disability. Each scar, each prosthetic, each adaptation represents a sacrifice for our country. Bridget still posts on social media about being a small business owner failed by the system. She never mentions the mockery, the scam, or the unpaid staff. Troy now works night shifts at a diner, sleeping on a friend's couch. Those who laughed at my disability now can't stand on their own feet. Karma does work in mysterious ways. I learned the hard way that family isn't always who you're related to. It's the Jennies of the world who stand up for what's right. It's the disabled vets who understand your struggles. It's the people who see your scars as badges of honor, not sources of shame. My workshop has a new sign now, proudly veteran-owned and operated. My prosthetic leg still squeaks sometimes when I work. But these days, the only sounds that follow it are the hum of machinery and the respect of people who understand that disabilities don't define us, they just show what we've survived. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well, running a successful business, and helping others while those who mocked you face the consequences of their actions.